The gunshot cracked through the desert air as Wilhelmina James dove behind the nearest water trough, her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. Dust billowed around her torn skirts, stained with 3 days of desperate flight across the unforgiving New Mexico territory. The year was 1878, and she had learned the hard way that a woman alone might as well be wearing a target on her back. "Come on out, Wilhelmina." The voice belonged to Frank Doyle, her dead husband's business partner and the man who'd framed her for murder. "We just want to talk about what you saw that night." Wilhelmina pressed her back against the rough wooden trough, feeling splinters dig through her thin blouse. Her throat burned with thirst, her blonde hair matted with sweat and dirt. She'd been running since they'd hanged Tom, since she'd overheard Doyle confessing to setting her husband up. Since they'd decided she knew too much to live. Another shot splintered the edge of the trough, sending water trickling down to the parched earth. She stifled a sob. 3 days without food, little water, and now cornered in some nameless frontier town whose only main street was empty save for her pursuers. Everyone else had the good sense to take cover when gunfire erupted. "I reckon that's enough." The new voice startled her. Deep, steady as the horizon, it carried the easy authority of a man accustomed to being heard. The shooting stopped. "This ain't your concern, stranger," Doyle called out. "When you chase a woman through my town, firing wildly enough to hit my horse's water, it becomes my concern." Wilhelmina dared to peek around the edge of the trough. A tall figure stood in the middle of the street, perhaps 30 paces from her position. Broad-shouldered, wearing a dark duster despite the heat, with a well-worn Stetson pulled low over his eyes. One hand rested casually on the holstered revolver at his hip. "Name's Rex Garrison," the stranger said. "I'm the marshal in these parts." Doyle and his 2 companions hesitated, exchanging glances. "We're after a fugitive. Murdered her husband in cold blood back in Santa Fe." "That a fact?" Marshal Garrison's voice remained level. "Strange how she's the one running for her life while you boys are the ones shooting up my street. We have a warrant which you can bring to my office, along with any evidence you have against the lady. Until then, I suggest you holster those weapons before I decide you're disturbing the peace." Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Doyle's face twisted with anger, but after a tense moment, he gestured to his companions. They lowered their weapons. "This isn't over," Doyle spat. "For today it is," Garrison replied. "The Wayfarers Inn has clean rooms. I suggest you gentlemen get some rest and we can sort this out tomorrow, properly." Wilhelmina held her breath as the 3 men backed away, finally turning toward the saloon at the far end of the street. Only when they disappeared inside did she allow herself to exhale. "They're gone for now, miss," Marshal Garrison said, approaching slowly. "Though I don't expect they'll stay gone for long." Wilhelmina emerged cautiously, her legs trembling so badly she had to steady herself against the trough. Up close, she could see the marshal's face clearly weathered by sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that suggested both laughter and hardship. He wasn't young, perhaps in his early 30s, but his movements carried the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice raw. He studied her for a moment, taking in her tattered appearance. "When's the last time you ate?" The simple question nearly undid her. I don't remember." Rex Garrison nodded as if her answer confirmed something. "My office is just down the street. It's not much, but there's food and you can clean up while we figure out what to do with those men." Wilhelmina hesitated. "Why are you helping me? 3 armed men chasing 1 woman doesn't sit right with me," he said simply. "And I've known Frank Doyle's type before. Whatever he claims you did, I'd wager there's more to the story." He didn't offer his arm or attempt to touch her, for which Wilhelmina was grateful. Instead, he kept a respectful distance as he led her to a small wooden building with Marshal painted on the door in faded letters. Inside was sparse but clean a desk, a few chairs, a small stove in the corner, and a narrow cot behind a partition. Garrison gestured toward it. "You can rest there." I'll fetch some water and food." While he was gone, Wilhelmina sank onto the cot, fighting back tears of exhaustion and relief. Her mind raced with possibilities. She couldn't stay here. Doyle had connections, money, and a warrant, however falsified. But for the moment, she was safe, and that was more than she'd had in days. Garrison returned with a basin of water, a towel, and a plate of food, beans, biscuits, and jerky. Nothing fancy, but to Wilhelmina it looked like a feast. "Eat first," he said, setting everything down. "Then you can tell me your side of things." She didn't need to be told twice. As she ate, Garrison sat at his desk, writing something in a ledger, giving her privacy without leaving her alone. When she finally slowed down, he looked up. "Better." Wilhelmina nodded, dabbing at her mouth with the towel. "I don't know how to thank you." "Start by telling me the truth," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Did you kill your husband?" "No." The word came out firm, without hesitation. Tom was investigating missing funds from the bank where he worked. Doyle was his partner. The night Tom died, I overheard Doyle arguing with him, confessing he'd been embezzling for years. When I returned later, Tom was dead and Doyle had arranged everything to point to me. Garrison listened without interruption, his expression giving nothing away. "Do you have any proof?" "Only what I heard. But I know where Tom kept his ledger showing the discrepancies, if I could get back to our house in Santa Fe." "That's a long way from here, and those men aren't going to give up easily." Wilhelmina's shoulders slumped. "They said I deserve pain," she whispered, looking down at her rough, dirty hands. The marshal was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, "Then let me take it from you." Her head snapped up, eyes meeting his. "I don't mean that in a flowery way," he clarified, his expression serious. "I mean I'll help you clear your name. It won't be easy and it'll be dangerous, but I don't cotton to men like Doyle thinking they can buy justice." "Why would you risk yourself for a stranger?" A shadow passed over his face. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when good people stand by and do nothing." He stood up, checking the window. "You should rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out how to get you back to Santa Fe without Doyle and his men catching up." Wilhelmina wanted to ask more, but exhaustion was rapidly overtaking her. She managed a nod before lying down on the cot. Despite the danger, despite everything, she fell into the first peaceful sleep she'd had since Tom's death. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the office window. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was, but then everything came flooding back. She sat up quickly, looking around. Rex Garrison was at his desk, cleaning a Winchester rifle. He looked up when she stirred. "Morning," he said. "There's coffee on the stove, and Mrs. Leary from next door brought over some clothes that might fit you." Wilhelmina blinked, noticing a bundle on the chair beside the cot. "You told people about me?" "Just that I had a witness under protection, nothing more." He set the rifle aside. "While you were sleeping, I sent a telegram to a friend in Santa Fe, former Texas Ranger who owes me a favor. Asked him to look into Doyle's background and the circumstances of your husband's death. And Doyle and his men, still at the inn, last I checked. They've been asking around about you, but folks here know better than to gossip with strangers." He poured her a cup of coffee. "I've been thinking about how to get you back to Santa Fe. It's too dangerous by stagecoach. They'd be watching every stop. We'll need to travel cross-country." Wilhelmina took the coffee gratefully. You think I'd send you alone, but your job, my deputy can handle things for a while. Besides, this is my job, bringing criminals to justice, protecting the innocent." He said it matter-of-factly, without any hint of heroics. Wilhelmina studied him over the rim of her cup. "You don't know I'm innocent. I'm a fair judge of character, Mrs. James. And I've never known a guilty person to run toward evidence rather than away from it." The way he said her name reminded her painfully of her situation. She twisted the wedding band she still wore. "Please call me Wilhelmina, or Will. After everything that's happened, Mrs. James feels like someone else entirely," he nodded. "Well, it is then, and I'm Rex to my friends." Friend, such a simple word, yet it brought unexpected comfort. "What's our plan, Rex? We leave tonight. I know trails the stagecoaches don't use. It'll take longer, but will be harder to track." I've got horses and supplies ready. He paused. It won't be an easy journey. Nothing has been easy since Tom died, she said quietly, but I need to clear my name, I need justice for him, and you'll have it. His conviction was so strong she almost believed him. For now, get cleaned up. The washroom's through that door. We have preparations to make before sundown. The day passed in a flurry of activity. Rex arranged for his deputy, a young, eager man named Charlie, to take over his duties. He gathered supplies, checked and rechecked weapons, and studied maps. Wilhelmina helped where she could, grateful for the clean dress Mrs. Leary had provided, though it was a bit large on her frame. As evening approached, Rex led her through the back door of his office to a small stable where 2 horses waited, already saddled and packed. "The bay is yours," he said, helping her mount. "She's steady and sure-footed. We'll head south first to throw them off before cutting east towards Santa Fe." They rode out of town as the first stars appeared, keeping to shadows and back trails. Wilhelmina couldn't help glancing back at the small settlement that had briefly offered refuge. Ahead lay unknown dangers, behind were men who wanted her dead, and beside her rode a man she barely knew but on whom she'd placed all her hopes. For 3 days they traveled through rough country, avoiding main roads and settlements. Rex proved to be a skilled guide, finding water where Wilhelmina saw only dust, tracking game for their meals, and selecting campsites that offered both protection and escape routes if needed. On the 3rd night, as they sat by a small fire in a sheltered ravine, Rex asked the question she'd been dreading. "Tell me about Tom." Wilhelmina stared into the flames, memories washing over her. "We were married 5 years. He was kind, honest to a fault. That's what got him killed." She swallowed hard. The bank had been losing money, small amounts at first, then larger sums. Tom noticed discrepancies in the ledgers and started investigating privately. He didn't trust his partner. Tom trusted everyone. That was his weakness, but he wanted proof before making accusations. She wrapped her arms around herself. "The night he died, I'd gone to visit a sick friend. When I returned home early, I heard voices from his study. Tom and Doyle were arguing. Doyle admitted to taking the money, said he had debts, gambling problems. Tom said he had to report it." Rex added a small branch to the fire. "And you?" I was shocked, frozen in place. Before I could make myself known, Doyle left through another door. I should have gone to Tom immediately, but I needed time to process what I'd heard, so I went for a walk. Her voice broke. "When I came back an hour later, Tom was dead shot with my father's revolver that I kept in my nightstand. The sheriff arrived almost immediately, as if someone had fetched him beforehand. Doyle had already set the stage," Rex concluded grimly. "Everyone knew I stood to inherit Tom's stake in the bank. They found the gun with my fingerprints, and a neighbor claimed to have heard us arguing earlier that day." She laughed bitterly. "We had been arguing about whether to have children. Tom wanted them, I wasn't ready." "And the ledger you mentioned?" Tom kept a separate record of all the discrepancies he found. He hid it somewhere in our house. He told me once, if anything happened to him, to look behind the loose brick in the parlor fireplace. Rex was quiet for a moment. "If we can find that ledger, it could exonerate you and implicate Doyle, if it's still there. If Doyle hasn't found it, we have to try." He reached across the small space between them, hesitating before gently taking her hand. "Will, I promise you, we'll find a way to clear your name." His touch was warm, reassuring, and Wilhelmina found herself not pulling away as she might have expected. Instead, she held on, drawing strength from the simple human connection. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked again, needing to understand. Rex's gaze returned to the fire. 6 years ago, I was a Texas Ranger. My partner and I were investigating a cattle baron who was forcing smaller ranchers off their land, sometimes violently. We gathered evidence, witnesses. Then one night, my partner was killed, shot in the back. The official story was that he'd been caught in a random robbery. Wilhelmina understood immediately, but you knew better. I knew it was the cattle baron's men, but he had the governor in his pocket, half the territory officials taking his money. No one would listen. His jaw tightened. So I took matters into my own hands, confronted him directly, things got out of hand. What happened? I didn't kill him, if that's what you're asking, though God knows I wanted to. But I did something worse in the eyes of the law. I gathered every piece of evidence and witness testimony and published it all in every newspaper that would take it. Created such a public outcry that even his political friends couldn't shield him. That doesn't sound so terrible. In doing so, I violated oaths protocols. The Rangers discharged me. The cattle baron eventually faced justice, but I lost everything I'd worked for. His eyes met hers across the fire. So when I see someone being railroaded by powerful men, I can't just stand by. Not again. Wilhelmina felt a wave of gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand once before releasing it. "Get some sleep. We've got a long ride tomorrow." The next morning dawned clear and cool. As they saddled the horses, Rex seemed distracted, constantly scanning their surroundings. "Is something wrong?" Wilhelmina asked. "Just being cautious. I've had a feeling since yesterday that we're being followed." Her heart skipped. "Doyle, can't be sure, could be nothing. But we'll take extra precautions today." They rode hard through the morning, taking an even more circuitous route than before. By midday, they reached a narrow pass between rocky bluffs. Rex held up his hand for a halt, listening intently. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Too enclosed. Perfect spot for an ambush." As if summoned by his words, a rifle shot echoed through the pass, the bullet striking rock inches from Rex's head. They both reacted instantly, spurring their horses toward the nearest cover, a cluster of boulders to their right. "Stay down," Rex commanded, drawing his Winchester. 2 more shots followed, kicking up dust near their position. Wilhelmina pressed herself against the rock, heart hammering. "How many?" "At least 2 shooters, maybe more." Rex peered carefully around the edge of the boulder. "One on each side of the pass up high. Doyle, likely." He checked his ammunition. "I need you to listen carefully. When I start firing, I want you to mount up and ride through the pass as fast as you can. Don't stop, don't look back." "What? I'm not leaving you." "Will, this is what they want, both of us trapped. I'll cover your escape and catch up." "No," she said firmly. "We go together or not at all." Frustration flashed across his face. This isn't the time for another shot struck the boulder, sending stone fragments flying. One caught Wilhelmina's cheek, drawing blood. Rex's expression hardened. "Fine, together, but you stay close and do exactly as I say." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a second revolver, handing it to her. "You know how to use this. My father taught me. I'm a decent shot." "Good. On my signal, we're going to make a break for that outcropping 50 yards ahead. It'll give us a better position." He took a deep breath. "Ready?" she nodded, gripping the revolver tightly. Now, they burst from behind the boulders, firing upward toward the hidden attackers. Wilhelmina glimpsed movement on the ridge, a figure ducking for cover. She aimed and fired, not expecting to hit but hoping to keep them pinned down. They reached the outcropping, breathless but unharmed. Rex immediately positioned himself to cover their rear while scanning for a way forward. "There's a split in the pass just ahead," he said. "If we can reach it, we can double back and flank them." A new voice called out, echoing through the pass. "That's far enough, Marshal. We just want the woman, Doyle." Wilhelmina would recognize that voice anywhere. "She's under my protection, Doyle," Rex shouted back. "You want her, you'll have to come through me. Don't be a fool, Garrison. She's a murderer. We have a warrant." "Funny how you found us so easily with that warrant, almost like you knew where we'd be." There was a pause, then Doyle's voice again. "We've got you surrounded. There's no way out. Send her out and you can ride away. No harm done." Rex glanced at Wilhelmina, a plan forming in his eyes. He leaned close, speaking softly. "When I say now, fire 3 shots toward the left ridge, then stay down." She nodded, positioning herself. "I'll consider your offer, Doyle," Rex called. "Give us a minute to talk," then, almost inaudibly to Wilhelmina. "Now." She fired 3 rapid shots at the left ridge. Simultaneously, Rex fired toward the right, then grabbed her arm and pulled her into a narrow crevice in the rock face, barely visible unless you were right next to it. They squeezed through, finding themselves in a tight ravine that curved away from the main pass. Without a word, Rex led her forward, moving as silently as possible over the rocky ground. "They'll figure out we've gone soon enough," he whispered. "But this should buy us some time." The ravine eventually opened onto a small plateau overlooking a valley. Below, they could see the main trail winding through scrubland toward distant mountains. "Santa Fe is beyond those mountains," Rex said. 2 days hard ride if we push it." "What about our horses?" "Had to leave them. We'll find others." He checked his ammunition. 4 shots left in the Winchester, 9 in my revolver. You, 3 bullets," he nodded grimly. "We'll have to make them count. Come on, we need to keep moving before Doyle figures out where we went." They descended from the plateau, keeping to rocky ground to minimize tracks. By nightfall, they had put several miles between themselves and the ambush site, but the lack of horses meant slower progress through increasingly difficult terrain. They made camp in a small cave, not daring to light a fire. The night was cold, and Wilhelmina found herself shivering despite the blanket Rex had managed to salvage from his saddlebag before their escape. "Here," he said, noticing her discomfort. He moved beside her, offering his body heat. "If that's all right." She hesitated only briefly before nodding. He settled next to her, arm cautiously around her shoulders. The warmth of him was immediate and welcome. "Thank you," she murmured. "For everything, most men would have left me behind by now." "I'm not most men." "No," she agreed softly. "You're not." In the darkness, his face was close to hers, features barely visible in the faint moonlight filtering through the cave entrance. Something shifted between them, the air suddenly charged with an awareness that had been building over their days together. "Will," he began, his voice rough with emotion. She silenced him by placing her fingers gently against his lips. "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too, but not yet, not until this is over." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm before releasing it. "When this is over," he promised. They slept fitfully, taking turns keeping watch. At first light, they continued their journey, following game trails and keeping to cover whenever possible. By midday, they reached a small homestead, a simple cabin with a corral containing 3 horses. Rex approached cautiously, Wilhelmina close behind. An elderly man emerged from the cabin, rifle in hand. "That's far enough, strangers." Rex raised his hands. "We mean no harm. We're in trouble and need help." The old man squinted at them, taking in their disheveled appearance, the dried blood on Wilhelmina's cheek. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where bad men are chasing a good woman," Rex replied honestly. "I'm Marshal Rex Garrison from Pine Ridge. This lady has been falsely accused of a crime. We need to reach Santa Fe to prove her innocence." The man studied them for a long moment. "Marshal, got any proof of that?" Rex slowly reached into his vest and produced his badge. The old man inspected it, then nodded. "Name's Josiah Miller. Lost my wife 2 winters back, been out here alone since." He lowered his rifle. "Come inside. You both look like you could use a meal." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean. As Josiah prepared food, Rex explained their situation, omitting specifics but making clear the danger they faced. "Men like that came through about 2 hours ago," Josiah said, surprising them both. 4 of them, asking if I'd seen anyone matching your description. Didn't like the look of them, so I played dumb." Wilhelmina exchanged an alarmed glance with Rex. "They're closer than we thought." "Likely circling back," Rex agreed grimly. "We need to move quickly." Josiah set plates of beans and cornbread before them. "Eat first, then I'll help you." After the meal, Josiah led them to his corral. "Take the bay and the palomino. They're not fancy, but they're strong and sure-footed." "We can't take your horses," Wilhelmina protested. "You can and you will," the old man said firmly. "I've lived long enough to recognize injustice when I see it." "Besides," he added with a wink, "I know the marshal here is good for it." Rex clasped the man's hand. "I'll return them personally with interest. Just see justice done, that'll be payment enough." With fresh mounts, they made better time, pushing hard through the afternoon and into the evening. They camped that night in a dense grove of cottonwoods beside a small stream, allowing the horses to rest, while they took turns standing watch. During her watch, Wilhelmina found herself studying Rex as he slept. The strong lines of his face softened in repose, the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Something had awakened in her during their journey together, something she'd thought died with Tom. The realization both frightened and exhilarated her. The next morning brought them within sight of Santa Fe. As they crested a hill overlooking the town, Rex reined in his horse. "We need to be careful from here," he said. "Doyle will have men watching for us." "My house is on the eastern edge of town," Wilhelmina said. "There's a back way through the arroyo that few people know about." They approached Santa Fe as dusk fell, keeping to shadows and back alleys. The streets were busy with evening activity, saloons doing brisk business, shopkeepers closing up, families heading home from church socials. Wilhelmina led them through a dry creek bed that wound behind modest homes until they reached a small, well-kept house set back from its neighbors. Lights burned in the windows. "Someone's there," she whispered, dismounting and crouching low. Rex joined her, Winchester at the ready. "Could be Doyle's men waiting for us, or it could be Maria, our housekeeper. She was like family to us." Wilhelmina bit her lip. "She never believed I killed Tom." "Only one way to find out," Rex said. "Stay behind me." They approached the back door cautiously. Rex knocked softly 3 times. After a moment, the door cracked open and an older Mexican woman peered out, gasping when she recognized Wilhelmina. "Dios mío." "Senora James, Maria," Wilhelmina breathed, embracing the woman as she ushered them inside. "You're still here." "Of course I am here. Where else would I be?" Maria wiped tears from her eyes. "They say such terrible things about you, but I know they are lies." "This is Marshal Garrison," Wilhelmina introduced Rex. "He's helping me prove my innocence." Maria nodded approvingly. "Bueno, you need food, clean clothes." She bustled about the kitchen, seemingly unperturbed by their sudden appearance. "Maria," Wilhelmina said urgently, "has anyone been watching the house? Men asking questions?" That Senor Doyle comes often. He says he is checking on things for the bank, but he searches, looking through papers, drawers." She lowered her voice. "2 men came yesterday asking if I had heard from you." Rex moved to the window, peering out cautiously. "We don't have much time." "Will, where's this ledger?" Wilhelmina led them to the parlor, a modestly furnished room with a stone fireplace. She knelt before it, feeling along the inside until she found a loose brick near the back. Carefully, she removed it, reaching into the cavity behind. For a heart-stopping moment, her fingers found nothing. Then, at the very back, she felt it a small, leather-bound book. She pulled it out, hands trembling. "This is it," she whispered, opening it to reveal page after page of figures, dates, and notations in Tom's meticulous handwriting. Rex examined it closely. "This is exactly what we need, clear evidence of Doyle's embezzlement with dates and amounts." He looked up at Wilhelmina, hope in his eyes. "This could save you." A noise from outside made them all freeze. Maria hurried to the window. "Riders," she hissed. 4 men coming up the road." "Doyle," Rex confirmed, glancing out. "We need to go now." "The root cellar," Maria said quickly. "They never search there. Follow me." She led them to the kitchen, moving aside a worn rug to reveal a trapdoor. They descended into a cool, earthen space filled with preserved foods and root vegetables. Maria handed them a lamp. "Stay quiet, I will send them away." "Maria, be careful," Wilhelmina pleaded. The older woman smiled. "Do not worry for me, Nina. I can handle men like them." She closed the trapdoor, replacing the rug. Rex and Wilhelmina huddled in the dimly lit space, listening to footsteps above, then a pounding on the door. "Open up, Maria." "We know they're here," Doyle's voice. They heard Maria's muffled response, too low to make out the words. More footsteps, the sound of doors opening and closing, furniture being moved. "If they find us here, we're trapped," Wilhelmina whispered. Rex squeezed her hand. "They won't. And even if they do, we have the ledger now. It's evidence of Doyle's crimes and your innocence." The search continued for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Finally, they heard Maria's voice again, stronger this time, apparently ushering the men out. The front door closed and silence fell. After a few more minutes, the trapdoor opened and Maria's face appeared. "They are gone, but they will be back. They do not believe me." They climbed out, Rex immediately checking the windows. "We need to get to the sheriff with this ledger before Doyle realizes what we have." "The sheriff won't help," Wilhelmina said bitterly. "He's in Doyle's pocket." "Then we go over his head. The territorial marshal in Santa Fe is an honest man. I know him personally." Maria was already packing food into a small satchel. "Take the back roads to the territorial offices. Senor Doyle will watch the main streets." Wilhelmina embraced the housekeeper fiercely. "Thank you, Maria, for everything. Go now, quickly, clear your name and come home." They slipped out the back door, keeping to shadows as they made their way through side streets toward the center of town. The territorial marshal's office was located near the government buildings, a two-story structure with lanterns burning in the windows despite the late hour. As they approached, Rex suddenly pulled Wilhelmina into a narrow alley. "What Doyle's men," he whispered, indicating two figures standing watch outside the marshal's office. "They've anticipated us." Wilhelmina's heart sank. Now what? Rex considered their options. "There's a back entrance for prisoners, if we can circle around." They retreated, taking a roundabout path that led them behind the government buildings. As Rex had said, there was a small door at the rear of the marshal's office, used for bringing in prisoners without parading them through the front. Rex tried the handle. Locked. He knelt, examining the lock. "Simple enough," he murmured, pulling out a small knife and working it into the mechanism. After a moment of careful manipulation, the lock clicked open. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a narrow hallway with cells on one side. All were empty. At the end of the hall, light shone from under a door. Rex motioned for Wilhelmina to stay behind him as he approached, listening for voices. Hearing none, he knocked. "Who's there?" a gruff voice called. "Rex Garrison, Marshal from Pine Ridge. I need to speak with Marshal Edwards urgently." There was a pause, then footsteps. The door opened to reveal a tall, silver-haired man with a weathered face and sharp eyes. He stared at Rex for a moment before recognition dawned. "Garrison, what in tarnation are you doing sneaking in my back door?" "It's a long story, Daniel, and we don't have much time." Rex gestured to Wilhelmina. "This is Wilhelmina James. She's been falsely accused of murdering her husband in Santa Fe. Frank Doyle, her husband's partner, is the real killer. We have proof, but Doyle and his men are hunting us. They've got men watching your front door right now." Marshal Edwards studied Wilhelmina, then nodded curtly. "Come in, both of you, quickly." Inside his office, they laid out the whole story: Tom's investigation, Doyle's embezzlement, the frame-up, and their journey to retrieve the ledger. Edwards examined the book carefully, his expression growing increasingly grim. "This is damning evidence," he finally said. "More than enough to warrant an investigation into both the murder and the embezzlement." He looked up at Wilhelmina. "Mrs. James, I believe you've been gravely wronged. I'll issue orders for Doyle's arrest immediately." Relief washed over Wilhelmina, so powerful she had to grip the edge of the desk to steady herself. Rex's hand found her shoulder, squeezing gently. "There's still the matter of the men outside," Rex reminded Edwards. The territorial marshal smiled grimly. "Leave that to me." He went to the door, calling for his deputies. Two men appeared promptly. "We have armed men surveilling this office. Detain them quietly, then assemble a posse. We're making an arrest tonight." Events moved swiftly after that. Doyle's men outside were taken by surprise and captured without incident. Marshal Edwards organized a group of deputies to apprehend Doyle, who was found at the finest hotel in Santa Fe, preparing to flee with a satchel of cash and forged documents. By dawn, Frank Doyle was in a cell, the evidence against him mounting as Edwards' men uncovered more of his schemes. The local sheriff, confronted with proof of his corruption, resigned rather than face charges himself. Wilhelmina, exhausted but finally safe, sat in Edward's office as the first light of day streamed through the windows. Rex entered, looking weary but satisfied. "It's over," he said, sitting beside her. "Edwards has telegraphed the governor. Your name will be cleared officially by the end of the week." Tears welled in her eyes. "I can hardly believe it. Believe it." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "You're free. Because of you." She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, the face that had become so dear to her in such a short time. "What happens now? That depends," he said softly. "I need to return to Pine Ridge eventually, my job, my responsibilities. I understand." She tried to keep the disappointment from her voice. But he continued, "I was thinking I might stay in Santa Fe for a while, help you get settled, make sure all the legal matters are properly resolved, if you'd like." Hope bloomed in her chest. "I'd like that very much." Their eyes held, the connection between them palpable. The door opened and Marshal Edwards entered, breaking the moment. "Mrs. James, I've arranged accommodations for you at the boarding house across the street. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe." "Thank you, Marshal, for everything." "Don't thank me, thank this stubborn fool." Edwards clapped Rex on the shoulder. Always did have a knack for finding trouble and a heart too big for his own good. Rex looked embarrassed. "Just doing what's right, Daniel." "Well, what's right has earned you both some rest. Go on now. We can handle things from here." The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, testimonies, and gradually rebuilding a life that had been shattered. Doyle confessed to Tom's murder when confronted with the overwhelming evidence against him, sparing Wilhelmina a trial. The bank, recognizing their obligation to Tom's widow, offered Wilhelmina a generous settlement. Her house, which had been in limbo during her accused status, was officially returned to her ownership. Through it all, Rex remained by her side, steady, supportive, increasingly essential to her happiness. They fell into an easy routine, taking meals together, walking through the plaza in the evenings, slowly healing from their ordeal. 1 month after their arrival in Santa Fe, on a warm evening with the scent of piñon wood fires in the air, Rex took Wilhelmina to a small garden behind the cathedral. They sat on a stone bench, watching the sunset paint the adobe walls gold and crimson. "I received a telegram today," Rex said. "My deputy in Pine Ridge needs me back. There's been trouble with cattle rustlers." Wilhelmina's heart sank, though she'd known this moment would come. "When do you leave?" "Day after tomorrow." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Will, these weeks with you have been—" "I've never felt this way about anyone before." "Nor I," she admitted softly. "Not even with Tom. Is that terrible to say?" "No, it's honest, and we've both had enough lies to last a lifetime." He drew a deep breath. "I don't want to leave you, but I have obligations in Pine Ridge. I understand. You have your life there, and I have mine here." "That's just it," he said, his eyes intense. "I don't want separate lives anymore. Will, come with me." She stared at him, stunned. "To Pine Ridge?" "Yes, it's not Santa Fe, smaller, rougher in some ways, but it's a good community, honest people. We could build a life there, together." "Rex, are you asking—" "I'm asking you to marry me," he said plainly. "I know it's soon, and after everything you've been through you might need more time, but I love you, Wilhelmina James. I think I've loved you since you looked up at me from behind that water trough, terrified but still fighting." Tears filled her eyes. "They said I deserve pain," she whispered, remembering their first real conversation. He brushed a tear from her cheek. "Then let me take it from you. For the rest of our lives." Wilhelmina threw her arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll come to Pine Ridge." He held her tight, his own eyes suspiciously damp. "I promise you'll never have to run again. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." They were married 2 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Pine Ridge, having traveled back together as husband and wife in all but name. The townspeople, who had heard the story of their journey, welcomed Wilhelmina warmly. In the years that followed, Rex continued as Marshal, his reputation for fairness and integrity growing throughout the territory. Wilhelmina opened a small school, using part of her settlement to provide education for children who might otherwise go without. They built a modest home on the edge of town, with a view of the mountains and room for the children they hoped would come. And when their first daughter was born a year later, they named her Maria, after the faithful housekeeper who had helped save Wilhelmina's life. On quiet evenings, they would often sit on their porch, watching the sunset, hands clasped between them. And sometimes, Wilhelmina would look at her husband and remember how he had found her at her lowest moment, how he had believed in her when no one else would, how he had promised to take her pain and had given her joy instead. It wasn't always easy life in the territories, never was. But they faced each challenge together, their bond forged in danger and strengthened by love. And in the end, that was all that mattered.